Welcome, everyone. My name is Marina Antunes, Festival Director for Spark Animation, and welcome to this special Meet the Filmmakers discussion. Very excited to have Hoku Uchiyama and Adam both with us today. Thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you very much.
The directors of Katy Perry's Harleys in Hawaii, which won a special mention at this year's festival. So congratulations on the project and congratulations on the award.
Yeah, it's a really big honor. Thank you very much.
Well, before we talk a little bit about the project, I wanted to get a little bit of a better sense of, for those that don't know you, how you guys met, when you started working together. Tell us a little bit about your history working together.
So we both went to college at Art Center College of Design in Pasadena, and we sort of immediately bonded over silly things like horror and cartoons, and that kind of set us apart from the rest of the very serious filmmakers we had around us. So the Kubricks and the Fellinis, we were just like Looney Tunes and Evil Dead, awesome.
Men after my own heart, I love it.
Yeah.
What was it about the combination of it's just such a weird mix, comics, cartoons, and horror? What is it about those two things that appeal to you guys?
In some ways, I think that they're kind of closely related. I mean, not, maybe not so much the high-end horror, but when you look at, when you look at kind of the bolder design elements in horror films and sort of just the kind of the really, I don't know, I guess more kind of, again, bold and sort of emotionally simplistic kind of angle that cartoons and horror sort of often have. I think they're kind of, strangely enough, on similar palettes, just maybe directed at slightly different age groups. And it was a relationship that maintained after school, probably most importantly, because I think that because we felt this kind of connection and this trust, because honestly, a lot of the stuff that we both like, some people would dismiss as bad taste. And we're like, no, that's actually good taste. Like this is cool. And so there's kind of a trust that develops there. And so, beyond school, we would just be sharing notes on our work all the time. Like we have separate creative lives, but those separate creative lives, I think, are very connected because, there's a high level of trust. So, and then eventually that turned into, as kind of opportunities for short form work came in. That eventually became a collaboration when it came to commercials and music videos, because it was like, I don't know, like both of us have very similar skill sets, but also some very, differentiating skill sets. And we were kind of able to sort of team up, I think, to become, a bigger beast.
What gave you the idea that, working together, like creating together, would be something that would work? Because sometimes, you might have similar tastes and whatever else, but when it comes to actually working together, things might not always be that great.
I'm personally really proud of it. Like, I mean, to be perfectly honest, it isn't always easy. Like Adam is one of my closest friends, if not my closest friend. And it's like and there is a real danger there. I have seen, the road littered with collaborators who have fallen out, who have been close friends before. And they've had close personal relationships before, they've had close creative relationships before, and it just has not worked, because there's a lot of things that get tied into it. There's the work, which you love, there's the creativity, there's money, there is, there's your time. There's a lot of things that can really drive, there's a lot of very core human things that can really drive people apart. And I feel like, I guess, circle back to the question, but I'm really proud that it has worked, even though, again, it has not always been easy. It's worked. And I think that, it started after
oh, sorry.
Okay. No, go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just wanting to add that it was something that actually took work. Like it wasn't sort of an immediate, complete understanding of like the balance between each other. And I think that's pretty normal. But yeah, it's gotten to a place where it's so easy, just to sort of kind of set our egos aside and figure out, what the best approach for any given project is.
Yeah, it started with a music video for Amanda Palmer and Jason Webley, and in that particular case, like I was directing it and Adam was working as the animator. But again, because we have such a just kind of a close relationship, like it's not like, we've since worked on projects where he and I have both been directors, and then we've worked with animators, and there's this more distinct partition, and with that project, it was a long project that I took like a year and a half to finish, and it was a music video that was like 2 minutes.
It was insane.
It was nuts. But it was us basically in the bunker together, and it ended up kind of being a calling card for work. And after having been in the bunker together, getting this to work for like a year and a half, we're like, yeah, let's jump in together.
So can you talk a little bit about, your working process when you're looking for work or when you're offered work? How, you do have some obviously some similar tastes, but I'm sure there's also some different tastes. How do you decide what jobs you're actually going to take on and what might not be right for you?
That's a tricky one. I mean, I think we both kind of know pretty quickly when something comes in, if it's right for us, if it's cool. I think, yeah, it's usually a process where we both kind of like split apart for a little bit, throw ideas at the wall, and then figure out what the best idea is. Or sometimes we offer two separate ideas and see which, our, music artist or commercial client or whoever it is wants to go with. And yeah, that can be really fun. It provides a lot more material and different options creatively, I think.
Yeah, and it's also there are different standards depending on like what the job is, so if, for example, I feel like, often music video, there's certain things, and music videos tend to be in those realms where, like there's less money. And if there's less money, you kind of look at it a bit more critically, like, okay, how much do we love this?
Yeah.
Because if you love it and you can afford to do it, life is short, you should do it. With a commercial, sometimes things come in and you're like, well, I don't really love that, but like it's a job like any other. And so it's like, okay, cool. And yeah, I think in both cases, and I think this is part of what's helped with our relationship is, particularly with commercials, it's a very client-focused kind of relationship. So, if we both have our brainstorming sessions together and we come together, I could be like, man, I really love this take I had. But then if Adam is like, well, I thought of this take and this really fits the brief in ways that yours, Hoku, does not, then at that point it's like, yeah, you're right. This is the job. And so at that point, that tends to be what we go for.
Adam, are you the one that kind of brings it back to earth, or do you both do that for each other?
Oh, we totally both do that. I mean, we all have our outer space moments when it comes to creative stuff. It's constantly a back and forth where one of us is coming up with the off the wall idea that the other is just like, dude, I don't know.
And then sometimes clients surprise you and they take the off the wall idea. And then the person who thought they were being the grounded, practical Mr. Spock is just like, oh, whoa, do I know anything anymore? Wait.
Now what? What do we do?
Which way is north? Which way is south? Oh my God.
I'm curious, and I think it'd be great to use the Katy Perry video as kind of like an example of how you actually work. Since we are talking about that particular project, does something like this come along often, where you get an artist that's doing an entire album of animated video? Like that's so out of like left field.
This is a very exciting, I mean, we could use this as an example, but this has been a very exceptional experience.
Absolutely.
Like we could use, I just want to put a pin in that this was exceptional and probably not indicative of probably about 90% of the things that we get to do. But no, it doesn't come along that an artist will. I mean, I'd say with music videos, you often actually, every now and again, you get people who are kind of doing this whole ecosystem that they kind of want you to contribute to. But most of them are not artists kind of at the cultural saturation level of Katy Perry. And so that's, you know, kind of where you're just like, whoa, my goodness gracious.
Yeah, I mean, it was partially just a very huge project for a huge artist, but it was definitely a product of the time, because it was weird for us when the pandemic hit and nobody knew what was going to happen in film. You know, there were no sets, you know, we were all working remotely, and it seemed like a lot of people suddenly gravitated towards animation because, you know, a bunch of nerds like us at our computers, you know, typing and drawing and whatnot is safe at the time. And I think her project was definitely, you know, specifically geared towards, okay, we can't shoot anything. What's a creative solution to get the album out there? And so that seems to us how it came about.
And so how did it come to you guys when, you know, it was presented? Did you get the song, or did you have a choice? How did that come about?
So Sarah Nix, who is the executive producer of music videos at Partisan, which is a company that represents us, brought it to us. And like, it's important to say, like, when we get brought things, like the chance, the likelihood is that we're not going to get it. We might not even pitch on it. Sometimes they're like, this exists. We're like, oh, that's cool. And they're like, it's gone. And so like, and then like, you know, and if you even get past that this exists conversation, often you work, you know, for a few days to a few weeks, pitching and communicating, and it goes away. And I feel like that likelihood often gets more extreme when you're dealing with an artist like, you know, of a certain caliber, where there's just going to be a lot of people who are really going to want to be involved. But, you know, I mean, we really like Katy Perry's work. And so we jumped in, we said, yeah. And they said, okay, cool. We're going to give you like a few songs just to work with. But then progressively it became like, we pitched on a lot of songs over the course of that period. You know, and we're lucky enough that two happen to appeal.
Yeah, those are insane odds. I mean, it seemed like we had so many different angles on different songs. We pitched maybe like 7-10 total for different songs. You know, one, you know, Hoku might have spearheaded conceptually, one I might have spearheaded conceptually, but there were just, it was quite a volume of pitches and a ton of fun creative ideas. And we just felt very, very fortunate that she jumped on the two of them.
Yeah, and people say this in making of things, and it sounds like BS, but I'll say this with her style, it's weird. And you know, I've always kind of liked what she's done, you know, like you know, she's not like, she's not an artist who, you know, like you know, like there's not posters of her on my wall, but I've always been like, oh, Katy Perry, there's a new Katy Perry video, cool, and watched it. But man, you know, like just kind of looking at her catalog of work and then sitting down and trying to think of things to fit it, it was one of the more comfortable, fun, just creative brainstorming processes I've had on anything in a really long time. And, you know, and it was just, you know, and it was easy. Like, I just felt like Adam would just, you know, say stuff and be like, yeah. And, you know, a lot of my first inclinations, I'd be like, yeah, you know, you know, I don't know how she feels. Obviously we got 2 gigs, but it felt like a very easy kind of creative connection. Yeah,
she's like loud, cartoony, and dabbles in horror sometimes, I think, in her work. So it seems like a nice fit.
Yeah.
Okay, let's walk through this creative process. So you start to get these ideas for concepts and pitches. What are you working from? Like, what does that actually look for you? Do you sit down with a pen and a paper? Do you start drawing electronically? Like, what's your process for each of you?
I'd imagine it's fairly similar for us. It's sort of conceptualizing ideas, writing them down, and sketching. Like, we both like to doodle a lot. So I imagine that's true for you too, Hoku, but when you're sort of coming up with ideas and it's centered around something crazy like a broccoli man, you draw the broccoli man, and that sort of creates a springboard.
Yeah, and it's also like, I think with music videos, there's also like, there's kind of there's 2 or 3 kind of places that my brain kind of gets like there's just sonically like what the song feels like. Like sometimes a song will just have some energy that for whatever, like, you know, and then sometimes lyrically there's something, and I tend to think the sonic connection is more important, but you know, like sometimes the lyric, you know, like Harleys in Hawaii was both, you know, where, you know, there's this lyric, you got, you know, you've got someone like Katy Perry who tends to be kind of kitsch in her approach to things. And then, you know, you think about, okay, Hawaiian kitsch, and you think animation. And so you think of a certain era of rubber hose stuff. But then also like, it was weird. Like you could, you know, you could play those cartoons under that song. And for some reason that I can't explain, there's a relationship to it. Like there's just this kind of slinky, you know, maybe it's the connection of rock and roll and jazz that goes back to, that somehow is talking to, I don't know, but like it's, you know, but yeah, like there's a few kind of things that you can kind of focus on, you know, with regard to lyrics and sound quality, I suppose. And, you know, and then that kind of, you know, helps send you on your way.
There's a vibe to every song that kind of sets you on a certain path, or whether it's, you know, something that's kind of fun and bouncy or something that's dark and moody, you kind of have that as your springboard.
So you've gone off, you've done, you know, some brainstorming. When you come together, how do you share your ideas? How do you start to sort of hone in on what that concept is? And how did it come about for Harleys in Hawaii? How did you kind of come to this idea that the rubber hose kind of design was the way to go?
I think we both, yeah, Hoku came up with the idea originally. And I think, you know, when I read it, I was like, yeah, 100%, that makes sense. Rubber hose, I'm in. Yeah. And then from there, like as an example, you know, with this particular project, you know, Hoku has a script and his ideas, and I sort of, you know, gave feedback on that. And that's how it works vice versa for any of these projects. You know, we had, you know, 11, 12 ideas, and each one we kind of shared with each other, and then, you know, oh, that's cool, but I think it would be cooler if, you know, XYZ. I think, yeah, I think I originally had some sort of, there was like I think a push for a stronger love story in Harley.
Exactly.
That's why originally, I think.
Exactly. Like it also, like the context, I also want to put the context of panic on this. Whenever we're doing this, it's a very unrefined, kind of ugly looking process, because we're usually really spread thin and panicked. And we're like, here's a PDF where I have some thoughts and some doodles. What do you think? This sucks in this way.
Yeah. It's important to note that these were done under a period of like days, you know, 5 ideas in a day, just like, how about this? No, that's terrible. How about this? Rubber hose, love it.
But yeah, like Harleys was a very, I am really kind of surprised. Like, so I grew up, my mom runs a Polynesian dance company. So she teaches and directs, she teaches students and directs a dance company. And she tours like Hawaii, Tahiti, New Zealand, and she, you know, makes albums. And so Polynesian culture is something, I'm not Polynesian. I've grown up around the culture a lot though. I'm not like steeped in it nor a champion of it like my mom is, but it's a culture I grew up around. And so when Harleys came in, I kind of felt a little conflicted, because I thought, okay, the most obvious approach is something playing with Hawaiian kitsch. And I nor my mom have a huge problem with Hawaiian kitsch, but we don't, Hawaiian kitsch in a vacuum where it's only that, and to the exclusion of the culture, like when it's just this kind of, you know, tiki iconography, you know, has been and can be very damaging. And at the same time though, I was like, well, this just feels kind of right for the song. So, you know, but I can't do that. Like, just, you know, given my relationship with that culture and that community, I can't do that. And so, you know, and also when you go back and you look at some of the cartoons from this era that explored Polynesia, a lot of them are really, really racist. Like it doesn't take much research to find that. So again, I was just like, yeah, like I really have a problem. So the creative solve was like, okay, well, what if you took that iconography that I think everybody kind of knows, even if you don't really know the specific racist cartoons, everyone kind of has that sense of like rubber hose hula dancing. But what if we used the connection that I have to these people who actually practice the culture to make it a representation, like to actually do proper hula, like to choreograph like a proper hula, and then to like feature all of these, all of these kind of touchstones of the culture that are more local. So you're kind of doing, you're doing the same aesthetic, but throwing away the stereotypes and trying to bring in something that's a bit more inside. And I was like, yeah, this is cool. And so then I talked to Adam and he's like, yeah, but dude, the song's romantic. And I was like, oh.
Yeah. No, that's a great point, because you get creative blind spots like that so easily, where it's just like you go into your hole and you're just like, oh, this idea really kicks. And then, and then someone tells you outside.
And he was absolutely right, because, Katy, that was part of some of Katy's work with the idea herself. There were romantic aspects of it where she was like, we've got, I really want to push that, because for her, the song came from literally like a romantic motorcycle ride with Orlando Bloom in Hawaii. So, to her credit, I'm so happy that she went for this. I think both Adam and I, when we sent it off, like, she's not going for this. There's no way. There's no way. But while she went for it, Adam was right in that, like, she still, like, that was, if you listen to the lyrics, like, again, you got music and you got lyrics, that was a central part of what was going on with that song. So,
yeah, I think that sort of comes back around to that client focus, a skill that we've developed over the years in terms of like working with commercials, particularly, where it's just like, what is this trying to be, if you distill it down? And yeah, I think that's always important for either of us to kind of circle back around to that in every project.
Hoku, I love that you talk about how it's both part of that aesthetic, but you're also very sneakily like undermining it by the fact that it's the hula dancer that's kind of leading this entire thing. She's the one that hops on the bike. She's the one that takes the boyfriend. Like, it's all the girls on the bike. I just think that's so like girl power. I love it.
That was really important. Yeah, that was really important to us. And that was actually discussed a lot, which was that, you kind of, there's this sort of, along with a lot of the kitsch approach to Hawaii, there's kind of this leery sexualization of the hula dancer that, again, isn't really what's going on inside that culture, and so it's like, it was kind of that. I think that seemed like an exciting possibility to both Adam and I to sort of, again, take those kitsch things that, I mean, again, even people in Hawaii who celebrate the culture, some of them do love Hawaiian kitsch, but like to take those and just kind of like, well, let's invert some of those things that have kind of been imposed on it by people who, are outside the culture, and invert them into something, that acknowledges kind of both sides of these, a number of perspectives and aesthetics and artistic traditions.
Can you guys talk a little bit about the process of the actual, like, once you have this concept and the idea for the story and you actually start working on it, how involved is the artist? Are you pitching, like, are you giving them like schematics, storyboards, like, are they giving you feedback, or are you presenting like a final product that they then, maybe make small edits on? What does that look like? Or at least what did it look like here?
You're talking about like the boots on the ground animators?
Yeah.
You were referring to working with actually Katy, right? There, or are you talking about the animation process itself?
Well, I think both, like for you guys when you're working with the animators and then working with the artists, because they ultimately, I expect that they have final say, right?
Well, Katy, yeah, she was, it's like, there weren't, for this video, there weren't a lot of notes. There was the romantic angle, which, was kind of like the central one, like, please make sure this is, like she had a lot of thoughts on that, but generally not a lot, it was, I mean, really, yeah, I don't think there really were. There were a few maybe like, I don't like this aspect of the aesthetic, please tone that down. I think she asked for us to change something like the name of the luau, the tiki luau at the beginning to Doe's luau, which I think, I don't know, that's, I've heard rumor on the internet that that's for Orlando Bloom, but I don't know if that's true.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, it was an amazing creative process because she was fairly hands-off and generally supportive of everything. So it was just like there were periodic check-ins, like character design or rough animations. It wasn't too granular. There were a few big check-ins, and her responses weren't generally all that difficult. So it was a really awesome process in that regard creatively.
Which again, no bullshit is unusual.
Yeah.
Like it is not usual for someone just to basically buy an idea and just say go. Like most of the time it's like, there's a fairly, there's a lot of feedback that sometimes can turn into arm wrestling because, for this concept, she seemed to just go with it. And that was amazing. Which again, going back to this being an unusual experience, this was a very unusual experience in a lot of ways. And one of my favorite, if not my favorite.
From the time you guys started to the actual delivery, what was that period like? I expect it wasn't a year and a half.
No, because we had a team.
Yeah.
Like the other one,
it wasn't
was like
just me.
Adam and I, maybe like 2 or 3 other very cool, hardworking people. No, it wasn't a year. It was like 3 or 4 months. Cool. And we worked with a team of animators, a place called Vascolo Studios in Argentina. And they were our collaborators. They did the character designs, they did the animation. So that collaboration was, we put together like an animatic, like a chicken scratch animatic of like, these are all the shots, these are the timings, and then we had like a few kind of preliminary discussions about the creative wells that we're doing. And it was kind of like the two things we were balancing, that the animation style and the culture. So we had sort of like okay, let's talk about rubber hose animation. This thing that all animation springs from, but that no one has a muscle memory for currently, and that we all need to kind of, try to get inside of and try to understand the principles of. And then we also had a talk about Hawaiian culture, where I was like, look, it's very, very important to be reverent to this. X, Y, and Z, we're going to send you a lot of stuff, but please don't assume anything, and please always ask. What's ironic about the situation is going into it, because they're an animation company, I thought, I don't know if Adam, you had the same thing, I thought it would be harder to get them onto the Hawaiian, like to nail the Hawaiian culture aspect of things, to nail the costumes, the dance, and it would be easier to get the rubber hose stuff. But it was the opposite. They like took to water, like the Hawaiian stuff, like their first passes at the dance, we were just like, oh my God.
It's
like,
done.
Like the Kumu Hula, Patrick Makuakane, who graciously like choreographed these dances, like he saw them in the first pass, he just freaked out. The rubber hose stuff was very difficult, but the Hawaiian stuff, the Hawaiian culture material and the hula stuff, they took to.
And I think part of the difficulty of rubber hose is that we've all kind of watched it growing up, but it's really the nuances of why it is what it is are very specific. And Hoku and I and the studio really had to break down like moment by moment why something would feel rubber hose versus feel modern. And Hoku and I were very particular about the rubber hose feeling authentic, as opposed to, I don't know, there's a lot of modern rubber hose inspired content out there that is done with like flash animation or, has lots of shortcuts. And the interesting thing about rubber hose is there are so many shortcuts. It's filled with shortcuts. The whole thing is shortcuts, but they're very different shortcuts. And yeah, we just had to dissect it so minutely to figure out those little moments, like where loops are and what a rubber hose artist would or wouldn't do with a character.
It's really weird how much it's one of those modern paradoxes where it's a style that developed, I'm fairly sure, out of expediency, but you end up, because they needed to produce these things in weeks, but you end up as people who have no muscle memory for that, working months to try to go like, why the fuck doesn't this look like?
That's horrible. That doesn't look like bouncing. It's like,
yeah, it's just like,
oh, because the head has to bounce too. That's why.
or it's weird. Like sometimes you just do a drawing and it's like, boy, that's still way too proportional. Like even though the head is big, it's like, it's not big enough. It needs to be a lot simpler. The outline needs to be thicker. Movement wise, it just needs to be a lot more basic. Like there's this, you're kind of really just tamping down on all these kind of really refined and sophisticated instincts that these animators and artists have. There's the sophistication that I think is just sort of, base level now for the animation community that you kind of have to, work down.
Yeah, there was an interesting and kind of hilarious design challenge where like making Katy's character in particular and the hula dancer, just this weird like fine line that you can't almost define between like a Bratz doll looking character and then an authentic feeling rubber hose character. Yeah. And so that design process was very tough.
But yeah, Vascolo, they fought through, rain, sleet, and snow, to get it right. And, I want to express my deep appreciation to them and their team.
Sure.
Because they, the concept was not easy. We were not easy. And I'm really happy with how it turned out.
You mentioned, Hoku, in passing the choreographed dance and how that was actually choreographed. Can you talk a little bit about that process? Did you guys capture that on video in advance and give that to the studio to animate too? Or?
Yes. Patrick Makuakane. Okay, so this guy is a kumu hula teacher, hula director. He is a friend and colleague of my mother's. They both work in the Bay Area, but they, Patrick and my mom met in Hawaii. When they were a lot younger, and he is a guy who is steeped in tradition. Like, I mean, he is one of the more I shouldn't say that exactly, but he really knows his stuff as far as tradition. But he also expands outside of that. Like he will choreograph hulas to pop songs, and as well as to traditional hula chant. And so when this came up, I was like, I was like, hey, Patrick, would you be interested in choreographing for a Katy Perry video? And he just was like, what? Oh my gosh. And so, yeah, he got onto Zoom with Adam and I, and we talked through, like, we just basically said, look, we would like two kind of bits of, we'd like to, these are small bits of hula. One that you would kind of see at a luau that I think most people would expect, and so that's what you see at the very beginning. It's a kaholo, which is kind of a move, sort of the side to side, a move that just, I think a lot of people, even if they're not steeped in Hawaiian culture, would know. But then when the hula lamp comes alive, we're like, we just like something that's just a lot more inside baseball, just something that, you're not necessarily going to see unless you spend a lot of time. He's like, okay. And so he worked that out with us, and then he got a dancer from his halau dance troupe named Kyla DeFries, and she came in and performed it alongside him for a video reference. And then we sent that to Vascolo, and they did their thing.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, now the videos out there's been seen millions and millions of times. Can you talk a little bit about, your work always gets seen a lot. You guys work in commercials, you work in music videos. These are things that are sort of out there in the public, but is it different with something like this?
For me,
it is. It's so here's why it's different for me in particular is a lot of our commercials go online and get seen by a lot of people, but the focus is almost 100% on the product and how much, this company sucks, blah, 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 you rip this. And with an artist like Katy, it's there's so much love in the comments, and there's so much support for the creativity that goes into the project itself. And it's really fascinating because, you know, I think with many music videos, these are coming from the minds of, you know, creative directors and artists, and not as often from the performer themselves. But a lot of people read into the music video that how did Katy come up with this? It's just like, it's amazing that she knew this and this about hula. And we're just kind of like, it's a weird compliment where you're just kind of like, oh, that's interesting, but that's very sweet. We love that.
Yeah, that's, and for me, it's like, you know, in some ways, this is that like this is the for me, it's kind of like the nexus of the most personal and most public thing I think I've done creatively. You know, it's like to the point where like I was working on this a lot with my mother. Like my mom was one of the big cultural consultants who would be, you know, on the phone with me until midnight going over like how the costumes looked as we were doing character designs, and, you know, this would actually be appropriate to see, this would not be, this could be the name of the halau. And so, you know, this is a part of my life, the connection to this culture that is not something that's been a part of like my film work. And so, you know, to do something like that in the pop space, and like Adam said, because it's a pop space with so much goodwill, you know, it feels really good. You know, it's nice, you know, and it's a nice thing to share with my mom because I got to do it with her. You know, it's a nice thing to share with Adam. You know, it's a nice thing to share with Brian, the producer on it. Like there were a lot of people who we worked on with who we liked, you know, Patrick. It's like, and to be able to share something with them that's in this kind of big well of goodwill is cool and unusual.
Yeah, and then to see also responses from people who really got the message of what we were trying to get across was really amazing. Like people who are in Hawaiian culture who saw it and kind of gave it the seal of approval that it's respectful and it's getting the message across was really cool to see.
Yeah, seeing people, connect with, you know, connect with some of the, you know, like the just the dynamic of like, you know, tourism versus, you know, kind of everything else in Hawaii and stuff like that, you know, and just seeing people, you know, kind of talk of, you know, like just seeing the themes land. You know, the themes don't have to land, I think, for you to enjoy the video, which I think is also important, but to see that it landed for some people and that they, you know, and that's felt, again, also feels nice. That doesn't always happen. So that's nice.
You know, you talked a little bit about how difficult it can be to do projects like this and how they often don't pay that well. So I'm curious, have you guys considered doing something on your own, like creating a short film that is not dictated by a song or lyrics or anything else, but that comes just from the both of you?
Absolutely. It's like, I mean, we are always working on those things, and it's like you know, I feel like, you know, the directing for short form content largely is a job, and it's a job that sometimes is a magical job like this one. But it's a job, and it's a job that we do to hope to try to allow us to write and create many times that we can create for ourselves. You know, it's such a different space to get those projects off the ground because they're basically vanity publishing. You know, whereas like with these kind of things, you know, they're like, we want to do this, you know, will you sit on this egg? And like,
exactly, yeah. Hoku and I have, you know, aspirations and for feature directing, and we write lots of cool scripts that are usually in the horror genre, which is not quite as cute as Katy Perry videos, but we definitely hope to do different sorts of projects. But Hoku's right in that, you know, these kind of things are like Sisyphean tasks of pushing a boulder up a mountain. There's not someone waiting generally to snatch up your idea because it's something they've dreamed of and wanted to do forever. it's our dream in that case. And so it's, you know, it's the work and the luck of making those kind of things happen. But we very much hope to.
Yeah, the work for that is always going on in the background, and you know, so and we're hoping so someday soon that it will be a public thing.
So wait, would this be an animated horror movie or just a horror movie? No, I say just, but you know, I mean, a horror movie or an animated horror movie?
You know, like I'm just going to speak for myself here. Like, I would love to do animated narrative work. You know, I feel like where I'm at in my personal directing path is one where the likelihood is that, you know, it's going to be scrappy for that first longer term thing. And, you know, scrappy and animated don't really go together when you're talking about long form stuff. So that puts me firmly in the live action realm. But,
Yeah.
you know, I would, you know, jump for joy at, you know, the chance to do something longer form animated. I love the medium. That's just me speaking for myself.
Yeah, we might do a reverse Brad Bird, you know. Start with the live action, go into animation at some point.
Yeah.
I love it. Brad Bird, if you're listening,
Yeah.
your next project is here. Thank you guys so much for making the time to talk about this project and for talking a little bit about your career. Best of luck. Congratulations. It's been such a joy.
Yeah, thank you so much for bringing us into this celebration of animation. And yeah, we look forward to seeing the other pieces. And this is really wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. We're definitely honored.